Hi guys. The last time we read, Kip and Molly were in the house with the Nightman, and the Nightman was in Master Windsor's room, and Master Windsor was saying, "No, no, no, don't hurt them," in his sleep. The Nightman stood over him, watching him toss and turn. He set down his watering can and reached a long hand into his cloak. He removed something gray and limp, a rag. The man pressed the rag against Bertrand's face, gently mopping his brow, his neck, his hands. Molly watched, trying to understand what she was seeing. The Nightman took the wet rag and held it over the open mouth of his watering can. He wrung the rag in his pale hands, and silver liquid trickled down, slowly filling the can. When the rag was dry, the man returned to Master Windsor and began again. He repeated this ritual over and over, each time filling his can a little bit more. Molly tried swallowing, but her throat was too dry. She could feel Kip right beside her, his breath hot against her neck. She did not know what she was seeing, but she knew she did not want to see it. Even more, she did not want Kip to see it. She let go of the door frame and slowly inched backwards. Crick! She heard a gentle crackling sound as her foot crushed a leaf. All at once, everything stopped. The house grew silent. The wind ceased. Even the moonlight seemed to disappear. A wave of dread overtook Molly's whole body as she felt something stir in the darkness. The Nightman stepped toward the doorway, his features hidden in shadow. He moved toward them. Please, sir." Molly backed away, bowing her head. "We're sorry. We didn't mean nothing." The man took another step toward them. Into the light of Kip's lamp, Molly saw his face, and her voice fell silent. The man's beard was a tangle of black roots. His skin was as smooth as bone. His mouth was a crooked scar, and his cheeks were hollow and long. And his eyes, Molly stifled. Oh, vocab word, stifled. Molly stifled a shriek. The man's eyes were not eyes at all, but two black pits burrowed deep into his skull. He tilted his head, pointing the pits straight at her, watching her with a look of cold curiosity. Molly stumbled backward, pushing Kip toward the stairs. "Stay away from us!" She groped the top of the cabinet, feeling for something, anything, to ward him off. She took hold of a vase and threw it at his head. The man, who had moved so slowly before, suddenly snapped to life. He snarled, and a gust of wind rattled down the corridor, knocking her hard against the floor. "Molls, get up!" She felt Kip at her arm, trying to pull her up. She pushed him away. "Kip, run!" Molly rose to her feet, planting herself between her brother and the man. "I won't let you hurt him," she said, her voice trembling. "He ain't done nothing." The man's mouth made the shape of a smile. He let go of his watering can, which fell to the floor with a heavy slosh. He reached a bony hand into his cloak and removed a fistful of dry leaves. Molly watched him crush the leaves into a fine dust and then raise his open hand to his lips. He blew onto the dust and it swirled through the air all around her. And then the world went dark. Chapter 28 is called Asleep. Kip was at the top of the stairs when his sister's body fell. One moment she was standing in front of him, the next she was crumbled on the floor, face down, not moving. "Molly!" Kip dropped the lamp and scrambled to her side. He shook her body. "Molls, get up!" His voice sounded faint in his ears, and his stomach was churning. "We have to run!" He turned her over, and her head lolled to one side like a dead weight. He could see specks of leaves stuck to her hair and face. Her eyes were closed, and she looked very pale. The Nightman took a step closer, a poisonous grin on his face. "Molls, you gotta hear me," Kip shouted, pulling her away from the man. He saw the green closet door was open. If he could just get her inside. Molly took a sharp breath and clutched his coat. No, she moaned, throwing her head back. "You cannot leave us. You can't." She was not talking to Kip, but to someone in a dream. Kip could see her eyes rolling beneath closed lids. Already tiny beads of sweat were forming across her brow. He glared up at the Nightman, who was standing over them. "Make her better," he demanded. "Wake her up." The nightman raised a hand and a gust of wind struck Kip, knocking him back from Molly's body. Kip tumbled down the stairs, legs over arms, slamming his shoulders and face against the hard wooden steps. His hand caught hold of the banister rail and stopped his fall. He pulled himself to his knees, wincing. He thought he could taste blood in his mouth. He reached out for courage but could not find it. His crutch lay at the bottom of the stairs, hopelessly out of reach. Kip heard Molly moan. He looked up to see the nightman kneeling beside her, his back to Kip, the watering can at his side. "You stay away from her," he screamed. The man did not even look up. He removed the rag from his cloak and pressed it to Molly's forehead. Kip knew he could not help Molly. His only chance would be to draw the nightman away from her. He searched around for some sort of weapon. The only thing nearby was his lamp, which he had dropped when Molly fell. He grabbed hold of it and threw it at the man as hard as he could. Poof! A blinding burst of light hit Kip's eyes as flames erupted in the darkness. The nightman roared as fire swept over his cloak. His arms swirled and thrashed, trying to snuff out the flames. The man staggered to the top of the stairs. He snarled at Kip and his face contorted with rage. "I said stay away from her." Kip let go of the banister and half ran, half slid down the steps. He hit the foyer floor with a hard crash. He could hear the nightman descending the stairs behind him. The whole house shook with the force of his gales. Kip grabbed hold of his crutch and staggered out the open front door. He hobbled across the moonlit lawn, his bare feet sliding on the wet grass. He did not know where he was going. He only knew he had to get that man away from the house, away from Molly. The cloth was still around the end of his crutch, and he tripped several times. Somewhere in the darkness behind him, he could hear the nightman stalking the lawn, searching for him. An angry howl split the air and knocked Kip flat. Apparently the man had spotted him. Kip pulled himself up. He covered his face and staggered toward the woods. The forest shook and shuddered as wind sliced through the branches and bushes. Kip stumbled blindly over the rough ground, shielding his face with one arm. Branches clawed at his clothes and hair. He could hear the nightman behind him getting closer and closer. Kip kept going as fast as he could until he thought his heart would explode. He fell to the ground, trying and failing to catch his breath. Every part of him ached. He looked up and saw that he was at the very edge of the grounds. He could hear the river flowing in the darkness. The ancient garden, whose pale flowers bloomed only at night, shone around him. The wind had stopped. Everything around him was still. A sudden coldness crept over Kip, like a shadow sliding across his body. He turned around to see the nightman standing behind him. The man didn't look winded or angry. He was just a fact of the surroundings, like the moon and the soil and the trees. Smoke wafted gently from the edge of his cloak and hat. Kip saw that his hands and face were unmarked. The flames had slowed him down, but nothing more. Kip knew what would happen next. The nightman would use his crushed up leaves and put him to sleep, just like he had done to Molly in the Windsors. And then he would kneel down and fill his watering can with what? Sweat? Tears? No, something deeper. He would somehow steal the very quick of Kip's being, all to feed the tree. The man sprang toward him, hands outstretched, but before he could reach Kip, his body snapped backward, as if restrained by the invisible tether. The man snarled, pacing at the edge of the flowers, his terrible, nothing eyes burning with fury. Kip scrambled back, dragging himself deeper into the garden, where the man, for some reason, could not follow. The sharp gust of wind shook the forest, and then everything was silent. Kip slowly turned around, blinking into the moonlight. He pulled himself to his feet, staring at the glowing forest floor. The woods were calm. Not a leaf stirred. The nightman was gone. Kip's eyes fell on something dark sitting at the edge of the garden, something the man had left behind. He hobbled toward it and knelt down to study the object. He picked it up in his trembling hands. It was the small, thin, and woven from roots and twigs. It was a gift. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Chapter 29 is called To Market. I wonder what that gift is.